Hello, Knockouts. Tonya TKO here, and I'm a self love specialist and relationship expert from TonyaTKO.com. I hope you learn to love yourself and each other. Today, we're going to talk about Black women catering to men, submitting to men, and even a little bit of intercultural, interracial relationships thrown in the mix as well. So, this conversation is meant specifically for women. So, men, kind of keep the comments clear so that we can have a conversation amongst ourselves, because I think that this is an important conversation to have. We just came out of my premiere that we had on YouTube, where we were talking about Black men, quote unquote, catering to Latina women, and where a lot of other people out there came from the colorist standpoint, pointing fingers at Black men, et cetera, et cetera. I decided to come at it from a different standpoint, where I was talking about, well, Hispanic American women are reared to cater to their men. And so, what man wouldn't want to cater to a woman who is catering to him? At the tail end of that video, we discussed the lack of ability of a Black man who has not already been programmed into how to keep a woman, how to be a bona fide part of that relationship functioning, if he's not reared for communication and hasn't done the work on himself, that regardless of how he really enters into the relationship, wanting to quote unquote cater to another because of how attracted he may be to her outside, because of how more European she may look. But if he's not trained and if he's not healed from some of his own brokenness, the same habits and patterns that existed in other relationships are going to come up in that one as well. And I think it's important for us to have this convo, because there were a lot of Black women who were on that broadcast who were not feeling what it is that I was saying when I was talking about catering to a good man who you look up to, who's worthy of you catering to him. And people, for some reason, was interpreting that as catering to bums. Oh, no, 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 baby, no. No. I don't advocate. You guys know I have an entire playlist for builder bums. I don't advocate uh, investing, squandering your time in relationships with people done the who haven't demonstrated that they have the ability to even take care of themselves. In the next video, I want to talk directly to men who are of this build a bum mentality, because there's a lot of Black men that I see wanting women to help raise them up. And I think that this is a tremendous faux pas, but I digress. Let's jump back into what this video is about. You know what? Let me do this real quick. Let me ask you, ladies, because this is my first real time talking about this in public. And I don't really know, I don't really know how to fully articulate it. So I'm hoping that this can be a conversation between us where we can share ideas and information that will help me be able to flesh out my own thoughts. Because if you were not raised in a household with a strong patriarch who is responsible and who has integrity, someone that you respect and look up to, uh, and have that balanced in a relationship with a strong matriarch who balances the household off of the strong patriarch and holds her position and does the things that she needs to do as the strong matriarch, and does it proudly and gleefully, and seeing the relationship that exists between those two. If you don't really know what that looks like naturally for it to function, then you may not know what to look for. And so I'm hoping that we can have the dialogue. My first question to you is, what's the matter? What is some of the apprehension that you have when you hear catering to a man, when you hear the word submit or submissive, or I think those are the key triggers right there. What comes up for you when those things are spoken? Because there was one girl on the broadcast who was like, "Oh, I'm sensing some pick me vibes." And this happens whenever I start trying to talk with Black women about things that we may be able to do differently to navigate better in relationships. It's not always someone else. It's a combination of the two. And it's easy for us to be like, oh, it's not me, it's them. They're the ones with the problem. Just like how Black men may be like, oh, the reason why I wasn't able to ascend to my full masculine glory is because I just wasn't attracted to her enough, or she just wasn't this enough. She wasn't sexy enough. She wasn't submissive enough. She wasn't agreeable or nice enough, or whatever the case may be. But like I said, if he hasn't done the internal work, he'll enter into this relationship with a person that he originally starts out catering to, and then it just turns into a brouhaha by the when all is said and done, because he just isn't equipped. And so when we start talking one-on-one, as Black American women, how many of us, if you look back in your life, how many of us have functioning, healthy example of a romantic relationship? How did you learn how to become a woman? Where are these African American men out here learning how to become men? And how are we learning how to be in relationship? Do you understand what I'm saying? And I urge you and I implore you that if you were raised in this culture and you've had, these messages passed on from the matriarchs and the patriarchs of your past, and if they were not exhibiting healthful relationships, I urge you to break the cycle right now. Especially with so many of us talking about wanting to date interculturally, wanting to date Caribbean men or African men, wanting to date interracially, wanting to date white men or Asian men or whatever. Far too many of us African American women are so disconnected from our feminine divinity that it sounds like an insult. It grates against our spirit to hear catering to a man. And listen, sis, I urge you, right? If you feel a feeling of revolting on the inside, when you think about giving of yourself and becoming vulnerable in relationship, I urge you to really kind of take a step back and really look at yourself. I urge you to take a step back and see what work may need to be done in your own personal, private, and romantic life. Because yes, there are things that other people may be doing, but the only common denominator in all of your relationships is you. And if you can't stand to hear that there may be something that you can do differently, how can you expect to heal those things and get to the next level is what I'm saying. All right? So hear me out. Find a good man. I'm going to tell this little story real quick about the king cobras. You know how king cobras mate, right? Like if you see king cobras mating, you think that they're trying to kill one another because the female king cobra wraps herself around the male king cobra and she's like lunging at his face, trying to attack him. And it's only when he's able to subdue her that she's like, okay, well, you're the alpha male or whatever, and you're worthy of mating, right? Now, that's an extreme example, but I think that a lot of us African American women approach relationships like that, except not for the end goal of finding the alpha male, but really approaching the relationship just being on the attack, being on the defensive because of all the stuff that we've learned growing up, all of the hurt and the pain and all of that stuff that comes up for us, so that we're like, I'm not going to be soft, I'm not going to be vulnerable. And you're like lunging at this person who's supposed to be your counterpart. Choose a good man. Choose a really good man. It's like, I'm going to say this and it may sound a little bit crazy. It may sound crazy, right? But hear me out, right? Men are such wonderful creatures. It's like you can get so much out of a man when you trust him and when you respect him. You know how you start telling a guy your problem? You'll be like, oh, I'm having this problem. And then all of a sudden, his construction cap goes on. And he's like, well, this is what you can do, this, that, and he's answering questions. He's trying to work it out for you. And even if you as a woman, you just needed to vent or whatever, but he's already put on his fix-it hat, and he's coming in with the solution, even if you may not have even wanted a solution, right? He's coming in with the solution and he's helping. Like, men are amazing, amazing creatures for doing different types of work that you may not want to do. I don't know how else to put it, right? When I had TKO Skin, there were certain things that I just found really tedious. Like, I found the invoicing really tedious, and I found other aspects just really tedious. Like, making the product I loved, but the shipping process, I really disliked the shipping process. Like, I didn't like the whole boxing and getting invoices and all. I didn't like that part. I liked the making videos, the making the product. I love that. And when it was time for me, listen, when it was time for me to hire a person, number one, I had to hire a person who I could trust, a person who I could trust to do the job, a person who I could respect, a person who would do the job in such a way that I could respect the way that they did it. And I had to relinquish, I had to submit. I had to relinquish, I had to take some of the power and some of the control out of my hands to have something accomplished for me that I wanted to accomplish. The reason why far too many of us stay small entrepreneurs is because we don't know how to delegate. And I'm telling you, as a woman, you can really, you can, I don't want to say flourish in a relationship, but you can really, I can't think of the right word, but gosh, you can gain so much from a relationship where you choose the right man to be in that relationship with. So I was looking for a person to work for me, but if you were going to hire a person to, let's say, co-run your company so that he would be the CEO and you would be the assistant CEO, right? That takes a lot of trust and a lot of relinquishing, and also the thought and knowledge that you can and will submit to their word, to listen to what it is that they have to say. But you have to hire an expert who knows what they're doing, a person who has a track record for being able to run companies like yours, so that if they say, this is part of the problem that we're having right now inside of this country, where we have a buffoon, a moron, who thinks that he knows more than the generals and all of these other people. So it's like, you don't have to be an expert at all of these different things. There may even be some things that you don't want to do, right? However, find a person whose expertise you can trust. And I think that part of the issue that happens for far too many of us is that we relinquish to the quote unquote expert. I can't even say expertise, but we relinquish to people who have not demonstrated that they have the ability to even govern their own company, their own life. Listen to what it is that I'm saying. Hear what I'm saying, please. When you look at this person's credit, track record, how their household is run, how their bills are paid, when you look at where it is that they've navigated in the rank of where it is that they are in their life. If you see that they aren't running their, let's call their life their company. Let's call their personhood their life, Let's call that their company. If you see that a person is not navigating and running their own company well, then you know that that's not the person to put at the head of your company. If you're doing a better job on your own, why hire a person just so that they could be a warm body just taking up space, somebody who you can't respect? And I think that it's a double-edged sword. When I said that there are places that we can do better as women, places that we can improve, healing that we can have, I personally believe that there are some of us who are specifically looking for men who are not capable, so that we don't have to relinquish. Let me ask you this. Some of the relationships that you're in, is your partner able to hold things down? Is your partner able to hold things down a day, 2 days, a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, 2 months without your input? Now there are definitely going to be things that you do better and that you can do better than this person. Does this person have the wherewithal to be able to seek assistance if you were not available? If something happened to you and you weren't able to do your part, is this person able to do your part and his? Is he capable? Do you trust that he can do that? Do you even trust that he can do these things with you there, as good or better than you can, or even up to par? Can he even do it up to par? Even if he can't excel at it, can he even do it up to par? And I implore you, ladies, if you're dating a person, if you're in a relationship with a man who is not able to run a household even or up to par, I I implore you to look at your choices as a woman and who it is that you've decided to be in partnership with. Because as a woman, if you can't rest, and listen, don't get me wrong, I know that we have compliments. I know that some people are better at paying the bills than others, but if your partner is a complete dunce at things that are necessary for running a household, a complete just backwards, and you can't trust them, especially when it comes to men, respect is so important to them. But if you can't respect your man, I don't know where that leaves you. If you don't feel, you know what? And I'll say this, right? Many, many years ago, I wondered whether or not I had it in me to submit. This was many, 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 many years ago. I wondered whether or not I had it in me to submit. And then I realized that it's just something natural. Just something natural that happens when you're in a relationship with a man who you trust. When you're in a relationship with a man who can govern. When you're in a relationship with a man who exerts strong masculine energy. It allows you the ability to rest in your feminine. It allows you the ability to relax, to relinquish, to not have to do it all yourself, to not have to worry yourself with a bunch of things that you may not want to do anyway. It allows you the opportunity to breathe. And as a woman, I urge you and I implore you to please, 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 I urge you and I implore you to please continue to look and vet your partners until you find a man who you can trust. Until you find a man, like people, they talk to me about why it is that I am single, right? And so I implore you that when you're going out there dating, that you date with the purpose of finding a person who can govern as you can govern by yourself or better. I implore you. And if you can't just if you've not found that, right? Then how much are you okay with being with yourself? Because we have this disparity out there, and I'm going to get off of the video, but we have this disparity out there where we have men who are talking about how they're looking for women to lift them up and all this, that, and the other. See, these are the types of men that you don't submit to. Submit to what? Can't run the household up to par. Like when you go out there in the dating world, and it's in your mind that you're looking for a man who you can respect and look up to and trust. It changes the type of questions that you ask. It changes the types of things that you look at. It changes the way that you navigate. And there are some people who are like, Tanya's not going to do anything but teach you how to be single, right? And I honestly do believe that there are many, many, many more of us that need to spend a little bit more time being single. honestly. Not even as an insult or a slight to anyone, but spending a little bit more time just not coupling up with somebody that you know from the gate, which you know from the gate is not a good match, but you just go along with it. And then you're in a situation where you don't feel comfortable catering to the person because you, one, you don't respect them, two, you don't trust them, three, you don't feel that they would cater back to you, four, they ain't catering back to you and you know that they won't, five, just not a good match. You just don't feel motivated to even, you don't feel like you can rest in your feminine to exalt their masculine. I just listen. On that note, I bid you all, I hug you all. Let me hug you all. Let me hug. Yes. Yes. Go out there and love one another, but most importantly, love yourself. I'd love to hear your comments about this video and what it is that we talked about in this video. I'd love to hear what are some of your issues and the things that you may be going through so that we can continue the conversation. All right. And on that note, I'm out of here. Go out there and love one another. Most importantly, love yourself. And loving yourself is taking the time to sit back and think and evaluate what are some things that you may be able to do differently, you know? And I don't know if I mentioned this in the video or not, because when we were talking about interracial, intercultural dating, you know, if we expect to be able to navigate out of the dysfunctions that exist in our African American upbringing and be able to meld into other cultures where women are able to rest in their feminine, if we don't heal some of these things now, much like with the African American men who are going out attempting to cater and then making a big boondoggle of the relationship, much like that, you know, if we don't do that healing, when we try to meld into those cultures, it's just not going to be a good fit. You know, so we got to start doing this inner work now. So on that note, I will see you all in the next video. Peace.